that it should be possible to get nearly complete control of cardiovascular disease. 2.5 years ago, I was at a meeting of the National Academy of Sciences in the United States. There was a little celebration there of my 90th birthday and the 58th anniversary of my membership in the National Academy of Sciences, USA. I was in the hallway of the Academy building, and another member of the Academy came up to me. He said, Dr. Pauling, I have heart disease. My brother and my father both died of heart attacks. I am a biochemist, but I was retired from the National Institutes of Health several years ago for disability because of my heart. I've had 3 bypass operations. My saphenous veins have been used up, so I can't have any more bypass operations. I like to walk, but I have trouble because after I walked a little way, I develop angina pectoris, pain in my heart. If I take a nitroglycerin tablet, I can walk a little farther, and then I may have to take another nitroglycerin tablet. He went on to say, I've been taking vitamin C, 6 grams a day or 5 grams a day for several years because of your recommendation. Is there something else that I could do that would permit me to walk? So I said, well, I can make a suggestion, never been tried before. Take lysine, the amino acid lysine. Well, I didn't need to tell him what lysine was, and that it's an essential amino acid, and you have to get around 1 gram a day to be in good health, and you get it in your foods. Because he's one of the most distinguished biochemists in the United States, recipient of the National Medal of Science in the United States. So he said, how much shall I take? I thought, here, what do I know? I know that people get 1 gram or 2 in their food, depending upon how much meat and fish they eat, and that it's essential they have to get around 1 gram. It hasn't any known toxicity in animals or human beings. So I'll make a guess. I said 5 grams. 5 grams a day. So he thanked me. A couple of months later, he telephoned me and said, it's almost miraculous. I started taking 1 gram a day and then 2 grams and so on. Within a month after I had reached 5 grams a day of lysine in addition to my 5 grams of vitamin C, I could walk 2 miles without any nitroglycerin tablets or without any pain in the chest. He said he had cut down the amount of heart medicine he was taking in half. It's almost miraculous, he said. So another couple of months went by, and he telephoned me and said, I was feeling so good the other day that I cut down a big tree in our yard and was chopping it up for wood, and I was also painting the house, and I got chest pains despite his 5 grams of lysine and vitamins. So he said, so I went up to 6 grams a day of lysine and 6 grams of vitamin C, and now I'm continuing chopping up the tree and painting the house. And now, a couple of years later, he's still in fine health. And so I published this case history, and Another heart patient wrote to me. Well, I shan't to go into detail about her. She suffered from stress angina. She had a television show, and if she were under stress in connection with the television show, she had to take a nitroglycerin tablet. If she climbed a flight of stairs, her chest would hurt, and she was taking 6 or 7 nitroglycerin tablets a day for several years. Also, she was taking vitamin C, and she said when she read the article about the first patient, she started on lysine. She has a PhD in chemistry and was a professor of chemistry in New Brunswick, University of New Brunswick in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. And she said within 3 weeks after she had reached 3 grams of lysine per day, she was able to go all day despite stressful occurrences without taking any nitroglycerin, and that she was setting off with her husband on a 3-month trip around the world. She's 67 years old, 68 years old now. So that account was published, and also another patient, so that I shan't go into detail about, a patient who had had 2 extensive bypass operations and was told that he was in bad shape with his arteries clogged, the coronary artery clogged, and that he was not a candidate for another bypass operation or for another angioplasty. He was living in the same town as the first patient, and friends told him about the first patient, so he went to see him, and he said, it's almost miraculous. Within a month after he had reached 5 grams of lysine per day, he was riding into town from his house somewhat out in the country several times a week on his bicycle, a 9-mile round trip, and was feeling fine, no longer just waiting around for his impending demise, as the physicians had recommended him to do. Well, I don't know that there's need for a randomized prospective double-blind controlled trial when you get evidence of this sort about the value of large intakes of vitamin C and also of lysine for preventing the deposition of atherosclerotic plaques and preventing death from cardiovascular disease. I recommend that every person, every adult, take 3 grams of vitamin C per day, and smaller amounts for children proportional to body weight. That every person who is at risk for one reason or another from heart disease take perhaps not only the vitamin C, 5 or 6 grams of vitamin C per day, but also 2 grams or more of lysine per day. 2 grams may well be effective prophylactically for people who have not had heart attacks, but larger amounts might be needed for people who are at greater risk for cardiovascular disease. So I believe that it should be possible, at any rate in the developed countries who are prosperous enough to be able to afford the rather small amounts of money needed for the vitamin C and lysine to get a large amount of prophylactic action against cardiovascular disease and against other diseases also, and an increase in the length of life, the length of the period of really good health, of well-being. So I am very optimistic about the future so far as cardiovascular disease goes. Thank you. Thank you.
I hope you've been impressed by the logic of this new approach to the treatment and prevention of cardiovascular disease. It involves the addition of vitamin C and lysine supplements. The lysine prevents lipoprotein A from sticking to the walls of the arteries, and vitamin C helps to lower circulating levels of lipoprotein A. Dr. Pauling recommends 3 grams of vitamin C and 1 gram of lysine per day as a general preventative dose. And for those with cardiovascular problems, he recommends 6 grams of vitamin C and 3 grams of lysine. Both are natural constituents of food. Neither are unsafe, even at doses considerably higher than these levels. If you do, however, have cardiovascular disease, we recommend you carry out this advice under the guidance of your physician, together with a well-balanced diet and supplement program high in other antioxidant nutrients, such as vitamin E and vitamin A.
You've just heard
Good afternoon. Welcome to the show. This is the Technology Hour, and I'm your host, Rin. We've got a great show planned for you today. I'm here with Owen Fonero, and we're going to be discussing some fabulous breakthrough information for folks that might be suffering from all kinds of things, but any type of heart disease. Welcome to the show, Owen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited to share this information with our listening audience because we just don't get to hear about this too much. And I know soon enough it'll be in a lot of, magazines and so forth.
Right.
And I know you've been doing radio shows here
Right.
and television shows recently.
Yeah, I can't explain that, and maybe after listening, people could try to, maybe they'll have some ideas on their own, because this is really not a new idea. The idea that there is the cause of heart disease might have more to do with vitamin C than any other single factor. And that's what I'll be trying to talk about today.
Okay, and it's interesting how you became involved in this because you are the CEO and co-founder of as the director of the Vitamin C Foundation, which is the Linus Pauling's.
Well, what we tried to do is we tried to take up when Linus Pauling passed away, the function that he was monitoring all the science on vitamin C, and if there was any maybe false or questionable information, he'd get right on it, and that's what we try to do, because there seems to be every once in a while there'll be misinformation in the media about vitamin C, and so we check on it and try to keep the most up-to-date and valid information on our website, vitamincfoundation.org.
Well, that occurs to me. It's quite likely, since more and more people are seeking out information, that maybe the vitamin C and this whole idea of looking at heart disease from a different point of view, because so many people trusted drugs in the past,
Right.
and now we find that there's this, all times the vitamin C that is important for getting rid of the C-reactive proteins, the chlamydia, that we've got the tests on homocysteine now, all can determine, really if we're in a heart disease process.
That's right. And it does, I don't want to steal any thunder from Dr. Thomas Levy, who's written a terrific book called Vitamin C, Infectious Diseases and Toxins. But he's a cardiologist, and he analyzed 27 known cardiovascular risk factors and reduced them all to a single factor, low vitamin C. And he's actually working on a book that's going to connect vitamin C and heart disease, and I think at that point, as good a writer as he is, that may have the kind of impact that we've been waiting for about a decade now.
Well, we really have, because you're right about this. There is a tremendous amount of misinformation, and just even 20 years ago when folks were going in and having chelation treatments, and I'm sure any of our listeners out there who have had it probably had, for the most part, a good experience from it. But, you know, from the peer reviews, you know, they're the first to say, no, it doesn't work. EDTA, vitamin C, magnesium drips, they just don't work.
I could go into, in fact, toward the end, maybe we can go into some of the latest studies on that have a lot to say about that.
Well, let's give us a little insight on the history and how you became involved.
Okay. And, well, how I became involved, I became interested in Linus Pauling about 1983 and 1986, and it changed my own life when I started taking vitamin C, at first at 3 grams, and now I'm up to 18,000 milligrams a day, like Pauling did. And because it had such a positive impact on my health, and the medical profession was at best ignoring it, or at worst ridiculing it, I became interested. I was not in the medical profession at that time. And we actually discovered a video in 1994 of Pauling. I think he filmed it in 1992. And it's a 1-hour video on heart disease. And what was amazing to me at the time was he was saying that he thought heart disease could be controlled, even cured. And here's one of the greatest intellects of the 20th century saying these things on video. Anybody can, you know, purchase the video or go to a library and rent it and see it. And we thought, so we obtained the rights to distribute that video, thinking that people with heart disease might want to know this information. Mm-hmm. And that was sort of what led me into this whole world of how there could be a cure, whether it works or not, a cure made by somebody of that stature, and the media is completely silent about it. Mm-hmm. And it was just amazing to me that could happen. Mm-hmm. And as I got into looking at his theory and researching it, it turns out that the original ideas that there was a connection between vitamin C and heart disease actually arose not long after vitamin C itself was discovered. In the 1930s, someone in the 1940s, the war got in the way. But then in the 1950s, a Canadian doctor, Willis, made probably the most crucial experiments. And he was able to show, well, first of all, he was noticing in his patients, he was a regular MD, that what we call atherosclerosis at that time, or even still, the white plaque that built up in his patients and the arteries, it builds up in the same places time after time in different patients. It wasn't randomly distributed throughout the body. And these places where he saw it was building up was places where he would actually computed that the blood pressure was highest. Wow. near the heart, where the arteries divide. And he began to think, well, maybe there's a mechanical or a stress due to the blood pressure and the heartbeat that's causing atherosclerosis. And at that time, they were very well aware that that vitamin C had a lot to do with the strength of your arteries. And he decided to test the idea that vitamin C had something to do with heart disease. And in guinea pigs, he was able to show, because guinea pigs are one of the few animals, besides humans, that don't make their own vitamin C. Cats, dogs, all 99% of the species all make their own vitamin C in very, very large amounts in their liver. We have to get it by mouth, like the guinea pig, and then we lose some during digestion. So he studied these guinea pigs, and in the amounts that he gave what we call a very low amount or kept deprived of vitamin C, all the guinea pigs got atherosclerosis. In the amount that he gave, adjusted for body weight, about 3 grams of vitamin C, none of the guinea pigs got atherosclerosis. So one single factor, depriving the guinea pig of vitamin C, created atherosclerosis. And these experiments were done in the 50s. He also then looked at humans, terrific work in humans, giving them 500 milligrams 3 times a day, which I know now is still a fairly low amount.
We're going to have a break right now, so if you'll just stay tuned, folks, audience, we're going to be right back.
Okay.
Welcome back to the Technology Hour, and I'm Ren, your host. We're talking today with Owen Fonarow. He is the founder and director of Vitamin C Foundation, and we're discussing Linus Pauling's research, and we kind of had to take a break there, so I'd like for you to continue the discussion.
Well, yeah, I was winding that up. Basically, just pointing out, and I want to give credit to Dr. Willis and the Canadian doctors in the 1950s who had almost had this answered and figured out, even though they, for some reason I can't figure out, were ignored after this, other than the fact that maybe just vitamin C by itself did not reverse heart disease. In about a third of the patients it did, about the third were about the same, and then in a small group, about a third had some progression in plaque, and that wasn't considered, I guess, monumental enough. And then we can jump forward really until about 1989. Dr. Matthias Rath was on a team in Germany looking at the post-mortem aortas, the thick artery that leads into the heart, and they discovered that there was a substance called lipoprotein small a that was the basic component of plaque, no LDL cholesterol, and this was what was forming the plaque. And Dr. Rath got the idea that there was also a connection with vitamin C, so he actually contacted Linus Pauling, went to his institute, and there they both came up with the theory that I'd like to talk about, and that is, at the bottom level, is that what we call heart disease is a form of scurvy. Now, scurvy, acute scurvy is what killed the sailors a long time ago, and we've got the limeys, the English taking limes to cure scurvy, and they discovered vitamin C. And that's the acute form will kill in 2 to 3 weeks if you don't have any vitamin C. But what Matthias Rath and Linus Pauling are saying is that what we call heart disease or cardiovascular disease is really a chronic, a slow, subclinical form of scurvy.
Wow.
And what they do, what they showed is that this lipoprotein small a has evolved in animals, the few animals, the guinea pig and humans, as a fruit bat and some higher order primates that don't make vitamin C in the liver. And in those species, they produce this lipoprotein small a in their liver, and what happens is the end result is, instead of having a leaky arterial system, we have this plaque coating that acts like a plaster cast for our arteries. So they think it's an evolutionary, what they call a surrogate for vitamin C. If you have enough vitamin C, you can avoid the whole problem. But if you don't, then your lipoprotein A is going to form these plaques, and that's their basic theory.
As a way in which we've evolved lacking the vitamin C to stop our vessels from leaking.
That's it. You've got it right on the head, and that's exactly it. Now, what's interesting, and what Rath has said, and what I've been able to confirm, is that the kind of heart disease that we suffer, meaning human beings, is not generally suffered by any of the animals in the animal kingdom. And they all make their own vitamin C, and that's crucial to this theory. So there's two aspects of it. One, beings that aren't making vitamin C in their liver, and again, they make it in the amount of about 3 grams to 13 grams, 3,000 to 13,000 milligrams per day, and that goes directly into the bloodstream. And one of the things Pauling discovered on his own research at his institute was about half of what we take in by mouth is lost. So to get, let's say, 9 grams, that's why he took 18. And I'll just say that Thomas Levy recommends 6,000 to 12,000 daily as a preventive. So given that the animals that produce it don't get cardiovascular disease, and then if we talk about the cardiovascular disease in humans, it's not randomly distributed. We don't get it in the fingers and the ears and the nose and what have you. Whereas if there was a poison circulating in the blood, like a cholesterol, like a homocysteine, you would expect to get it randomly. But where we get it is, again, where the blood pressure is the highest, near the heart, where the force of the heartbeat is.
Where that would create the leaking vessels, and then, of course, our body makes, comes to the rescue with this lipoprotein to support the leak.
Exactly. So that's their basic theory. And again, like I said, the original people who kind of had the right idea, they didn't know about lipoprotein small a, were back in the 50s. So Pauling and Rath and earlier, and they were able to show they've got 3 United States patents for basically correcting and treating cardiovascular disease, formulas to treat cardiovascular disease with vitamin C and lysine, proline, substances like that. That it turns out there's something called a lysine binding site that medicine has discovered. And what it binds to, it doesn't bind to your artery if your artery is healthy. But if your artery suffers what's called a lesion or sore, a crack, then part of the collagen that's holding the body, the artery together starts to stick out. And these are called lysol residues, and this lipoprotein A then sticks to it. So that's how the healing happens. You have to have the lesion first. And then you'll have, again, knowing, according to the video, that the lysine binding site, Pauling said that any physical chemist would say at once, well, what you want to do is increase the amount of lysine in your blood. Mm-hmm. And so I would never have thought of that. Thank God he's, two-time Nobel Prize winning chemist. Mm-hmm. And people who have watched the video and reporting back to us, this is stretching back to 1995, have had phenomenal results by taking very large amounts of vitamin C and lysine and proline and the other substances that Pauling recommended in his general writings, such as vitamin E, vitamin A, carnitine, and that type of thing. But the real crucial ones would be the vitamin C to strengthen, produce the collagen needed to strengthen the arteries, and then the lysine, the proline, are what they call lipoprotein small a binding inhibitors, and that would be what the terminology would be for the cure for heart disease, if Pauling is right. And we've looked through the literature. I'll be able to cite later the literature that supports it. There really is no literature that doesn't support it because they're not studying it. It's being ignored.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, just for our audience that might not really know the scope of Linus Pauling's work, this is a lifetime of work, primarily, probably over at least, 30, 40 years. Wait. And his work was primarily with vitamin C, but he is known as a founding molecular biology as the science of it, and of course, creating ultramolecular medicine.
Right. In fact, when you start trying to list his accomplishments, you can't do it justice. Mm-hmm. He was the premier chemist of the 20th century. He did invent basically modern chemistry, and his book on the nature of the chemical bond was what he won his first Nobel Prize for in 1954. What's very interesting is he probably was at retirement age before he found or learned about vitamin C. His interest in vitamin C happened in his 60s.
Oh, wow.
At that point, he became fascinated both first at vitamin B3, niacin, because it was being given to schizophrenics at very, very high doses with no known toxicity. And it was fascinating to him that you could give a substance that has such a powerful effect at a small physical dose, but you could take an enormous dose with no toxic side effect. And he found vitamin C was the same way, and he became fascinated by it.
Wow.
And he also was being told then by Irwin Stone that his health, he could live another 30 years. And so there's hope for everybody, even if you're in your 60s. He didn't start taking vitamin C until his 60s, and he lived to be till 92. And thankfully, I think the vitamin C had a lot to do with the research he was able to do for those 30 years.
Isn't that fabulous?
Yeah, primarily focused at vitamin C. So then, of course, he ran into what you run into when there are substances that cannot be patented, that are not going to make a great deal of money compared to prescription drugs. Mm-hmm. And, how do those substances get a fair shake in the so-called scientific journals when they may, interfere with an enormous amount of profit? That's what he ran into and he wrote about, and I've seen it firsthand. Mm-hmm. And those of us, I'm very appreciative to be on the radio now. It's a very rare that people, whoever is listening, will get information like this.
Well, that's why they do listen, because I try to bring out as many of these hidden, more obscure, actual founded bodies of information that people need to know about. So we're really happy to have you on the show.
I said I've got a lot to talk about. One of the interesting things that sticks in my mind, and we run a website called paulingtherapy.com, and this is to emphasize that the invention of Pauling and Rath, but we think that Pauling had to do with the dose, more to do with the high dose being recommended. Mm-hmm. We think that's why he did the videotape, because it does take 5 to 6 grams of vitamin C and lysine to get the kind of results.
How much of lysine?
Pardon me?
How much of the lysine?
Both of them, and again, this is on the video. But at the first time that it was tried, he recommended 5, and that worked for a while. Then 6 grams of lysine, and the gentleman was taking 5 to 6 grams of vitamin C.
So you're making this available, the video, and we can order this video.
Right. Pauling Therapy, if you spell Linus Pauling, it's paulingtherapy.com. And that has all the information both on this theory, how to get the video. There's some products out there that already mixed. Because if you take a pill, it's quite a few pills every day. And so some people...
So you have this prepared already in a mix with everything.
That's right.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
And what's that called?
It's Heart Technology by Tower Laboratories. That's the one that we're pushing. I think there's other ones out there. They're all primarily about the same. You can get the basic ingredients. Again, the fact of having not to take so many pills and having it pre-mixed if you're trying to recommend it to somebody, not worry that maybe they're missing something.
Right.
So it's a good idea to get the formula. But if I may, I want to talk about just one case that I think is very, very important. And up on this website, paulingtherapy.com, you can click on the testimonials. And one of the there are lots of people there. And we almost didn't put it up because it's easy for anybody to sit down and write things. But people started to ask us, and we had all these things collecting, so we started to post them. And we tried to put their names and numbers, although putting people's names and numbers on the Internet is always not the wisest thing. But so people could call them and talk to these people who have reversed their major heart disease. And one of the ones that really sticks in my mind is a fellow named Jeff Fettleson, who was a veteran. And he was getting his heart care through the military, through veterans, for 10 years. And he had multiple heart attacks, multiple surgeries. And, he could hardly walk. He got to the point where he was on his deathbed, really. I mean, they had his daughter and his son drove overnight to be there, and they thought this time was it. And again, cardiology had 10 years to work on this fella. And what he did, and he made it through, and he got home, and he's sort of computer illiterate, and he says, there's got to be some other way. And he just typed something in, and he actually got Pauling Therapy. We talked, and he started taking that day 14 grams of vitamin C and 6 grams of lysine. And then his story's up there. And basically what he said, in 2 days, he knew it was over. I mean, his heart disease was over. He didn't, and he's terrifically well today. We put a little video of what happened to him up there. But the reason this is important is because a lot of other people that we know might have tried some other alternatives. They might have tried chelation. They might have tried this fella. All he did was under the care of cardiology. Then he went straight to this Pauling Therapy at a really good dose.
Right out, 14 grams. That's high.
Well, he went to 14 grams of vitamin C. That is high. But he went to 6 grams of lysine, and those were the two. And that was, again, he told me in 2 days, people didn't recognize him in 2 days, in a week, and it just kept getting better and better from there. And that brings up another point. Doctors are taught, they're prescribing toxic substances, and therefore they are taught to give the smallest amount that gets the desired effect. And if they can't get the effect, then they up it a little bit because they know they could, cause some kind of damage. In these orthomolecular, what Pauling's talking about, vitamin C, lysine, no known toxic dose. It's the way to think about it is completely opposite. You should go up to the highest amount that you can take, and then you back off until the nuisance problems go away, maybe the loose stools or whatever. So it's a completely different paradigm that Pauling has brought to the world, where these orthomolecular substances. If you start way too low, in fact, that's been the problem with most of the science for vitamin C, and that Thomas Levy was able to identify completely. Any study that didn't show value of vitamin C had very, very tiny amounts. Every study that has had high amounts of vitamin C has shown enormous benefit. And so that's really the key here, is to proper dosing.
And these are in powder forms, of course.
Well, for the product that I was mentioning, but I think people, sounds like we're going.
Yeah, we're going. But we'll be right back, and we'll get to talk about that product. Stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back after a brief message. Welcome back to the second portion of the Technology Hour. We're visiting today with Owen Fonarow. He's the co-founder and director of Vitamin C Foundation, and we're discussing the current science on or heart technology, and we've just been talking about Linus Pauling's research and, of course, discovery on heart disease. You were talking about the powdered form and
Right. Well, the heart technology has tried to incorporate. I could tell the little story behind the company is that the founder had known Linus Pauling personally, had been up on at the Malibu Ranch, and when this work on lipoprotein small a was being done, and Pauling had made a statement, he said, if these experiments turn out as we think they might, it would mean that heart disease could be eradicated. And that stuck in this entrepreneur's brain. And, of course, the experiments did pan out. This were with guinea pigs, and they did find lipoprotein A elevated in the guinea pigs that were deprived of vitamin C. And so he tried to be faithful to Pauling and went around looking for other products that might be able to give the amounts that Pauling was recommending, and there were none at that time. So he made the product for himself. And he wanted it to taste good, to be drank, to avoid the pills. And then it occurred to him if it was, if other people might find it useful also, and it's called Heart Technology from Tower Labs. And it provides either 3 grams of lysine and vitamin C as a prophylactic or 6 grams of each for therapeutic, and some people are even taking more. As I mentioned with Mr. Fennelson there, he took a lot more vitamin C, and he had a very rapid turnaround in a 10-year cardiovascular problem.
Now, this product that he took, was it the heart technology product?
He started actually just taking vitamin C and lysine. We put him on he ordered heart technology, and he got that within probably a week. So he has been taking heart technology from, I'd say, the first week on.
When you get the heart technology, and it's, I guess, by a tablespoon or teaspoon or whatever you do.
2 measured teaspoons in water.
So how much vitamin C is in just 1 teaspoon then?
Well, in the serving is 3,000 grams.
So that's a safe, and then, of course, you can go up from there.
And it's designed, so that you can actually go to 2 to 3 to be in the therapeutic range.
Okay, but then maybe more times a day, even.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Right, and that's, people have to, it turns out there is a wide range in people's tolerance for vitamin C. Mine, one of the reasons probably I'm so enthused about this is I was able to take the same 18,000 milligrams a day, and I have been since 1986, that Pauling was taking. Other people might be, have trouble with 200 milligrams. They start to have trouble with it. So there is a wide range, but most people, it turns out, can take about from 4,000 without any problem a day. Sometimes.
And Owen, I know that the folks that have suffered from hepatitis, of course, this is, you could say, a therapy that has been known for a long time to, of course, begin on the vitamin C crystals and work up to 18,000. That's the target. But then, of course, go slowly and go to the point where day by day you increase to the point where there's diarrhea, and then you back off, and then you kind of stabilize, and then you can continue to work up.
Right, and I'm not...
So, a lot of people that have liver congestion, that is a determining factor of why they can't tolerate more.
Right. That's true, and I don't know what the answer is for why there's such a range in the normal population, but it might be worth taking a few moments to talk about Dr. Cathcart's bowel tolerance finding.
Okay.
And that finding was that people can, tolerate between 4 and 16 to 18 grams a day, and those people, when they're well, that doesn't change. But when they become ill under stress, then their bowel tolerance can go up to 50, 100, even 200 grams. So 10 to almost 100 times more vitamin C can be absorbed when they're ill or under some kind of a disease condition under stress. And then when that disease condition goes away, they go back down to their normal day-to-day bowel tolerance. And what's very fascinating about that chart is that you can use it, and doctors should be using it, you can diagnose the organism that's attacking you, because you can look on his chart.
Isn't that something?
And you can
Do you offer this chart?
The chart is at orthomed.com, ortomed.com. It's he first published this in the 1980s. It's titrating. You look for his titrating paper.
Oh, the titrating?
Yeah, titrating the bowel tolerance, and there the chart is on that paper. It's on the internet. And what's fascinating about it, one time I was up to about 150 grams a day without any diarrhea. I was having something, and I looked on there, and I saw there was really no viral illnesses. The only chance was it was a bacterial, and then I went in, got myself a antibiotic, and it went right away. Wow. So you can use the chart to help differentiate certain viruses from bacteria. And you can use the chart to help differentiate certain viruses from bacteria. from bacteria. I'm sure the SARS thing probably is enormous. I know mononucleosis is 200 grams a day. People who have mononucleosis can take 200,000 milligrams of vitamin C without getting diarrhea.
So it's very effective for virus.
Very effective. And that's Thomas Levy's whole thesis. If you go back in, you can actually, it takes IV doses, but at very, very high doses, it could destroy viruses. So that's another aspect of this that's going to come into fruition. But if we can get back to heart disease, I don't know how much time I have. I would like to mention this study in the Journal of the American Medical Association, because I'm sure some of your listeners out there are saying this is all well and good, but what is there any science for this? Is that possible for me to go ahead with that?
Oh, sure. We're probably going to have a break here in just a minute.
Okay, well, I'll just stop talking when I hear the music.
Okay.
But there was, by the way, I'm a very, very strong proponent for chelation therapy, for removing the heavy metals. I know of the anti-cancer effect, and I think it's probably helpful for heart disease, although I think the vitamin C is crucial. And the successful chelation therapies are also getting vitamin C. But anyway, I was talking to one of the Dr. Waters in Wisconsin is one of the pioneers in chelation therapy, and he said, did you hear about that JAMA trial? They gave vitamin C as the placebo. And I was shocked, that they would do something like that, not thinking that it was spelled out in the paper, but it's completely spelled out in the paper. They gave both groups, and this is, it's called a chelation therapy for ischemic heart disease, a randomized controlled trial in the January 23rd, 30th, 2002 issue of JAMA, Knudsen et al. And in there, what they had is what the press of the story, the reason they got it published is they said there was no value in EDTA over placebo. But what you didn't hear was that both groups increased these are heart patients. There was a placebo group and this EDTA group, but both groups were given 5 grams of vitamin C and 750 milligrams of magnesium IV, and both groups increased their time 60 seconds on the treadmill, and they say in the study that's what we were looking for. So it's not as if EDTA didn't work. Both, they didn't have any increase in time to ischemia. Both groups had it, and they gave both groups vitamin C. And so it really is a very interesting confirmation of the Pauling therapy. I went back into Medline looking to see if there was anything else that could provide that kind of increase in the treadmill time, and I did find a testosterone patch was close, but for instance, the statin drugs, I talked to the author of the study, did not show any increase in time to ischemia on a treadmill. So, what we have really is one of the first times we've got something published, only because it seemed to debunk EDT chelation, but it showed that these heart patients getting vitamin C had a significant, measurable, objective improvement in their time on the treadmill.
That's wonderful. We'll be right back, so stay tuned. Welcome back to the Technology Hour. I'm Ren, and we're here with Owen Fonarow, the director of the Vitamin C Foundation, and we've been discussing the Linus Pauling tape that clearly spells out there is certainly a reduction in heart disease, if not a cure. And so of recent studies, we find that, in fact, there are people that have had really severe heart disease and now are free from that. So you wanted to get into a little something, Owen, about...
the vitamin K, calcium buildup. Yeah, I'll do that real quick. One other thing it's a little bit, just email that I just got that I'd like to share, because I subscribe to the Townsend letter, and the people that read that, and I have a few of my articles have been published there, and they contact me. And it turns out in the United Kingdom, they've run a study of the Pauling therapy, the first one, and it's from 1997 to 2000. So it's a 2 to 3 year study, and they gave 6 grams of vitamin C, 6 grams of lysine, 800 vitamin E, and the bottom line was that while the normal plaque growth was 15 to 30% in the placebo group, our main important observation was that plaque growth was nearly halted to 2 to 3% per year from 15 to 30 in the Pauling therapy group, and that's about to be published. The thing that I wanted to mention about what I've been, in researching heart disease, we've been studying the Pauling therapy, and we have seen cases where Angiograms have shown that people have had a reduction in the plaque, but they still had high elevated blood pressure and stiff arteries.
Mm-hmm.
And that has led me to the discovery of not only that vitamin K has a role in regulating calcium out of soft tissues and into bones. In fact, in Japan, 45 milligrams, which is a very high amount of vitamin K, is the one of the treatments for osteoporosis. But it turns out the anticoagulant drugs that cardiologists will give to people, and they're trying to, this is what's in their toolbox, and they're trying to prevent heart attack. But the drugs work by blocking vitamin K uptake, generally by the liver, and this creates a pseudo-hemophilia in people. They can't clot as fast. But it turns out by creating this vitamin K deficiency, it is increasing, apparently, the calcium buildup in soft tissue arteries and heart valves. So the same drugs that people are taking, we're thinking it's going to help them in one way, is apparently having a problem another way. And I'm
by thinning the blood, right?
Yeah,
So
they're
that
trying to thin the blood, and they're doing it by blocking vitamin K. But by doing that, it's causing buildup of calcium. In fact, I'm looking now at one of the Medline articles about Warfarin, which is one of these drugs, causes rapid calcification in the elastic tissue in rat arteries and heart valves. And they say aortic calcification was first seen after 2 weeks of Warfarin treatment and progressed increasingly in density at 3, 4, and 5 weeks. By 5 weeks, the highly focal calcification of major arteries could be seen on radiographs and visual inspection of the artery. And so in the animal studies, these thinners caused this calcium buildup. And I know of one gentleman, we're going to write this up, who had very high stiffness. There's an arterial stiffness index. And he was, he's on the Pauling therapy in his 70s, and we learned about this connection with vitamin K, and the only thing he changed, the number was the normal number was 60, his number was 250 for the stiffness. He just started taking vitamin K, and I think it was 6 to 9 months later he had the same test redone, and he was down to 60, which is what mine is on this heart technology. So simply by taking vitamin K, it seemed to have made his arteries much more elastic, less stiff.
Now, were these high doses, do you know?
Pardon me?
Were these high doses of vitamin K?
No, actually, he was taking a fairly low dose. I think
low
he was
dose.
probably taking 1/10 of a milligram. I thought he was taking 10 milligrams, and that's, but he was taking a fairly small dose. I think we don't really know yet what the optimum dose is. I know Dr. Levy is actually researching this. Being a cardiologist, he's very interested. He's got people.
Because vitamin K is for clotting, so that you.
Well, it turns out you require vitamin K to have correct clotting. That doesn't mean your blood is thicker when you have that. It just, what they're doing is creating a pseudo-hemophilia.
Right.
Blocking one of it. But just by taking more, it's like taking more vitamin C doesn't cause your collagen to grow.
Sure.
More than, it's the same idea, but vitamin K is involved in so many things in addition to this that it really is a shame that the people don't know the fact that this is not probably the optimum way to prevent heart attacks. In fact, if you want to prevent a heart attack, according to Circulation, American Heart Association, as an Oxford team looked at 27 major studies, and they focused on lipoprotein small a, this lipoprotein small a that Pauling and Rath identified, and they said if you have elevated lipoprotein small a, your chance of a heart attack is 70% greater than those who had normal or under. And the number really doesn't matter. Nobody's going to remember it. But the point is that lipoprotein small a seems to have a lot more to do with whether you're going to have a heart attack than some of the other things that we've been looking at over time. So I wanted to get that out. Thank you for the opportunity to let people know. They can, we do have something called another website called BolenReport.com that gets updated every day, where we have lots of links on the second page to all these studies in Medline and what have you on a different look, let's say, at medicines. Okay,
so that is an important site also. So you got your site for people to get more information, to order this tape from
PaulingTherapy.com is the one for the video and the Pauling therapy.
And how is Bolin, the way it sounds?
It's a B as in boy, OLENREPORT.com. Tim Bolin is a phenomenal person who is going after these so-called quackbusters who are out there protecting regular medicine by calling anybody who says anything that they don't agree with, a quack.
Right.
And so Tim has made a name going after them in court, and this is his newsletter. And so it's the only place you're going to be able to read about this because everybody else is afraid to talk against it.
Conclusion of the Technology Hour. I'm your host, Ren, and we've been visiting today with Owen Fonarow. He is the co-founder and director of the Vitamin C Foundation and has given us a website that we can contact him for the Linus Pauling video, which describes the cure for heart disease. Is that right?
I believe so.
All right. And then what we can call that or look at that number. Is there a number someone can call?
PaulingTherapy.com should get you everywhere else we go. That points to all the other websites we've been talking about, the Vitamin C Foundation, the Bolin Report.
So go to
PaulingTherapy.com, I think, is the one to start at.
Okay, PaulingTherapy.com.
Right. I don't know how much more time we have. The only other thing I'd like to mention is we've been seeing more people recently are getting cataracts, and it is known that if you're taking a statin drug and have an antibiotic, the pharmacist should be warning you to stop the statin. I don't know if you're aware of that. And I was trying to find the website during the break here. I'm not going to be able to do it probably in the time we have. But on the second page of the Bolin Report, you could...
Well, we know that cataracts are as a result of calcium thrown out of solution. So it's a hardening, actually, once again.
Okay.
And also might attribute to macular degeneration because of lack of blood flow.
Right. That's right. There's a team, and I was going to... I might be able to get to it now. They basically said that for people on statins, typically 10 days doubles the risk of cataracts, and 2 or more courses triples the risk.
And what drug is this?
Pardon me?
What?
And it's Dr. Richard Sendelia, and it's at you can go and get to it from the second page of the Bolin Report. But what he had said is he was taking the antibiotic erythromycin in combination with the popular statin cholesterol drugs may increase the risk of cataracts.
Oh.
And he's had this up, and he's done some press releases. And I was just pointing out that we get people calling here, they're age 50, pretty young, who are getting cataracts and finding out that they are on these cholesterol drugs, and they did take a course of antibiotics.
Mm-hmm.
And the pharmacist didn't tell them to stop the statins while they're on the antibiotics. So I was just hoping to get that little message.
That's fabulous. Well, erythromycin is taken for skin, for acne. I mean, it's a common one.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So you just got to be careful. I don't know. I'm sure you've talked before about the fact that the same mechanism that lowers cholesterol also blocks the production of coenzyme Q10, and so these drugs are also, especially as their dosages are increasing, doctors are more comfortable giving higher doses. They're causing cardiomyopathy, heart failure. And there's an epidemic of heart failure that can be traced back to the statin drugs. So it's just good for people to keep their eyes open and do their own reading and research and try to make sense of this out there. There's so much money to be made in drugs, it's sometimes hard to get the science is there.
Yeah, and this Bolin Report is one that you can just take a quick glance at and see what's new.
That's exactly right. It changes every day, and if there's anything important, it'll be right at the headline at the top.
Okay, as it changes. So that's the BolinReport.com.
That's
right?
correct.
Excellent. Is there a number someone can call to talk with you or to order this?
Yeah, I'll give you, hopefully I have this memorized. It's 800-894-9025. 800-894-9025, and they can ask about the Linus Pauling video. We can talk to about the heart technology nutritional drink mix, and I can talk about any of the subjects that we've been talking about today. I do that a lot.
Excellent. Well, that's wonderful.
Okay.
We probably have another couple of minutes here.
Okay. Well, we can we can go to almost any direction that you'd want to go.
I like this vitamin K stuff because actually we might be just about out of it. We're going to have you back on because the vitamin K
I'd be happy to, and thank
huge.
you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
We'll talk with you next week, and thank you, guests, for spending your Saturday here with us, and we'll talk with you next week. Bye. Okay, we're back. Owen, I have a quick question here. We discussed the liver and its way it manufactures this glutathione, which is really important as it helps with this healing process that goes on with the LPA. Could you describe that once again?
That music, I didn't get the entire question.
Well, the glutathione, or the glucose portion for the liver, at the liver when it's congested, there's a certain process or pathway that you mentioned last week.
Well, what my understanding, again, is to the particular 3-step or 4-step pathway that the animal's kingdom turns ordinary glucose, ordinary sugar, into the 4th step, into vitamin C. And that's the one that I'm most familiar with, and that we do have the ability, but we're missing an enzyme. Looks like a congenital or a defect that happened maybe, Pauling estimated, 3 million years ago. And so our relatives seem to have the same problem. The guinea pig has it. And if it were not for that defect, we would be producing vitamin C mostly out of the sugar we eat. And unfortunately, that's my limit to my knowledge of the liver.
My fault then. I thought we were talking about free radicals and part of the way in which we make the antioxidants.
Yeah. That. I don't know how much time we have here.
Only a couple more minutes. So.
Well, real quick, let me just finish with the heart technology and the Ascorzine 9. Just to one of the things that we like about it, besides the fact that it comes in as a liquid, so there's no issue of when the pill might dissolve. There's also no fillers. All the pills have to have something that holds it together. And people don't think about that too much. When we start taking 25 or 30 of different kinds, you can really be taking a lot of fillers, and who knows what you're getting. So again, this mix is pure vitamin, amino acid, and stevia. Tastes great, and we've been seeing really phenomenal anecdotal results. And we're trying. If I didn't mention it, I should mention that we actually have a study before the National Institute of Health. This is the second time the Vitamin C Foundation has applied for a grant to study it. We have over 200 people in Florida waiting to go. They turned us down the first time, not because they didn't anything wrong with our study procedure, but they didn't like the physicians that we got to run the study. And although when we went to the normal universities, they pretty much laughed us away. And so we've done it. We've resubmitted again, and we're hopefully all set to go. It hasn't officially been turned down yet, but they haven't. We were supposed to know by April. And hopefully, we'll post that obviously we have our study on the Vitamin C Foundation website, our proposal, and if that were to come through, it would be the first time in the United States that anybody has been looking at this in a rigorous way, the effect of the heart technology style product on heart disease and lipoprotein small a.
Fabulous. Give out your phone number.
800-894-9025, and vitamin...
894, what is it? 800
894-9025.
894-9025.
That's correct. Be happy to talk with anybody about what we've discovered. Of course, we have the video from Linus Pauling himself, 1 hour, including the first 3 cases where high-dose lysine were given first time, and the miraculous recoveries that were noted back in 1992, and that we keep hearing about time after time after time. The hospital, the cardiovascular wards are filled with people who were told there's no value in extra vitamin C. I know of no one who's taken 10 grams of vitamin C more than 5 years who has any evidence of cardiovascular disease, and neither does the Life Extension Foundation, which ran a study that showed that.
Thank you so much, Owen, for being with us
today. Thank you for inviting me.
You. And yes, absolutely. And folks, have a fabulous Ladies' Mother's Day. God bless you all, and we'll see you next week. Talk to you. Technology Hour. I'm Lynn, your host, and today I've asked Owen Fonarow, the director of the Vitamin C Foundation, to come back and share with us some more information on a vitamin that we all know we need to take, vitamin C and ascorbic acid. It's very vital, in fact, essential for human beings, yet we don't store it too well, and we need it on an hourly basis. So welcome to the show, Owen. I'm happy to have you back, and there's so much about this topic, and we're going to be talking about heart technology, lysine, and vitamin C right off.
Well, thank you. Yes, it's great to be back again, and thanks for inviting me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to repeat what we spoke about before too much, but we probably should review just the basic idea that there is a complete unified theory that has been developed from work that started in the early 50s into a theory that what we call human cardiovascular disease should really be called chronic scurvy, which means non-acute scurvy. And it, as the human body does not get the amount of vitamin C that the animals get, the arteries tend to weaken, and what happens, what could be almost considered a healing process, as plaster-like casts form on the arteries, protecting them from leaking.
Like a patch for the inside of your inner tube on a bicycle or something.
Exactly. And what's interesting, and what we mentioned last week, is there's two cornerstones to this theory. One being that the animals, which make vitamin C in their bodies in very, very large amounts, between 6,000 to 13,000 when adjusted for body weight on a daily basis, do not get this kind of buildup, the plaque, the patch. They don't seem to need it.
And that plaque we disclosed, we shared with the audience is actually, there's a name for it. And is that
the lipoprotein small a? Is that what we're...
Lipoprotein small a, which is naturally occurring, and it actually should be a friend, not a foe.
That's right. That's the theory, that in human beings and the very few species that haven't produced their own vitamin C, that this is really a form of cholesterol, has evolved to as a surrogate for low vitamin C. And what's interesting, and what Pauling first brought to my attention, was that the animals that make their own vitamin C don't have this particular lipoprotein in their blood. It's the animals that have that don't make the vitamin C, and there's very few of us.
That make this lipo small a protein.
That's right.
That is there to patch a potentially leaking artery.
That's exactly right.
So there should be a shut-off valve that says, okay, I've got enough here, I'm going to stop producing that. And of course, that's when we should be supplied with some more vitamin C.
That seems to be the direction that the research is taking us into that area. What Pauling and Rath did, the first experiments were done in the early 50s that showed that vitamin C could stop, basically prevent atherosclerosis in the guinea pig, which does not make its own vitamin C. And then they went off into humans. But they didn't know about lipoprotein small a in 1953. It looks like, from looking at the patents that Pauling and Rath have, that the first people to identify lipoprotein small a were in the 1960s, although not much of the work was done. And then about late 1980s is when they discovered that it was lipoprotein A that binds to the lysine binding site and as you said, forms the patch.
And of course, lysine is a major cornerstone to our collagen matrix, which makes up all the ligaments and arteries and our human flesh.
Absolutely. And what the theory is, just to get right to it, is that when the artery does what they call a lesion, but it could be a crack or a sore, the collagen that's wrapped around our arteries, providing a girder-like structure, pieces of the lysine that do make up that collagen start to stick up, and that's what attracts the lipoprotein small a to start forming the plaque. It's called the lysine binding site. There wasn't a Nobel Prize necessarily for this finding, but it was the finding that led to the idea of the lysine binding sites that Pauling mentions in the video on all this. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is, knowing that these molecules stick to these lysine, the pieces of the collagen, as you mentioned, the structure of the collagen that sticks out during an injury.
So you can kind of see it as a hair that is like a strand of hair that is what we call a split end, where the actual hornous layer is beginning to curl up.
That's right.
And this comes along and attaches to it because it's going to smooth it down.
Right. And what Pauling said, and this was the invention. So what the Vitamin C Foundation, what's been known since the 1950s is that a deficiency in humans of vitamin C leads to the problem, but to reverse it requires the amino acid lysine, which, like vitamin C, there is no known toxic dose. In other words, you can give any amount to animals. They talk about, the lethal dose level, LDL 50, that kills half the animals. Mm-hmm. You cannot kill an animal with either vitamin C or lysine. So you have two completely non-toxic substances, one which is basically at the heart of the problem, the other one, which one of our our premier chemist says that any physical chemist would tell you that knowing about the way that this builds up, that increasing the concentration of lysine in the blood will tend to dissolve atherosclerotic plaques, and that was his major contribution to this.
And both vitamin C and lysine are essential, means that we don't biologically transmutate it when we don't have it somewhere to grab.
That's right.
That we have to get it from a diet.
That's exactly correct. In fact, I may have this number wrong, but I think you have to get at least 2 grams a day to survive. So in other words, to stay in nitrogen balance. So you have to get lysine every day, just like vitamin C. Mm-hmm. So that's the basic idea here, that there is a mechanism. Once I started the research, trying to follow this through back in history and forward and see what's going on for whether people are looking at this and investigating this. Pauling's associate in this, whose name rests right next to Pauling and every one of the patents and all the papers, is Matthias Rath. And Matthias Rath also recommends the amino acid proline. And so this was not specifically recommended by Pauling. We looked into it, and actually after Pauling died, they did discover the proline binding site. I've talked to the people at the University of Chicago. And in fact, this binding site also seems to be what holds the sticky, it's called ApoA, surface to the LDL, or bad cholesterol molecule, making lipoprotein small a. So proline seems to be involved in both putting the molecule together as well as sticking. And in the test tube, proline is at least 3 times more effective than lysine in dissolving plaques.
All right, we're going to be right back, so stay tuned with us. We're going to have a great show today. Okay, welcome back to our program this afternoon. It's the Technology Hour, and I'm your host, Rin. We're visiting today with Owen Fonarow. He's the director of the Vitamin C Foundation, who has really brought to light, or at least much of the information that was developed and patented by Dr. Rath and also Dr. Linus Pauling. So the music kind of covered up what you just said about proline, because that's an interesting factor as well. And
right, it looks like both of the lysine and proline, which are what are amino acids, and to remind everybody, those are the constituent building blocks of protein. When we digest our protein, animal protein, it breaks it down into amino acids, then our body puts it together into our proteins. And so, but unlike lysine, proline can be made by the human body. We think that as people age, they might make less of it, and that might explain why there's more cardiovascular disease as people age. Mm-hmm. So we think proline and lysine and vitamin C are the 3 vital nutrients here with respect to cardiovascular disease, both stopping the problem and then reversing the problem. And of course, the question that must come to mind is if there's any validity to this whatsoever, why hasn't science been looking at it? And
well,
if you want me to go ahead, I could give my.
I sure do, and I want to make note that over this past week, and just researching vitamin C and everything that I could find in my 35 years of papers and reports, I came across something that was pretty incredible. How it actually was a paper on the government stonewalling vitamin C, and of course I looked right there, and here it goes back to reciting the time where polio in the late 40s, early 50s, when there was this terrible outbreak of polio, where it was disclosed at many of these first large meetings of the government and doctors and research to say that polio could be eradicated with high doses of vitamin C?
You're speaking of Dr. Fred Klenner. And Dr. Klenner, the story goes is that he was treating a patient. He was a Reidsville, North Carolina physician, and they used to make house calls in the 1930s and the 1940s. And a patient had two distinct conditions. One that was untreatable or no known treatment. The other one was known to be treatable by vitamin C, and he happened to have some for injection, and the particular ailment caused the skin to be blue, and it was known that you could provide vitamin C and return the skin color. So he did that, and he observed that the other supposedly untreatable ailment, a viral ailment, cleared up. And that precipitated his research into a keen observation until I've got to read a reporter who wrote in 1954 that she was speaking with Dr. Klenner, and he had showed slides of hospital records and fever charts and told of case after case of meningitis, encephalitis, virus pneumonia, and serious complications following scarlet fever and other diseases treated with massive amounts of vitamin C. And what's interesting here is that many patients had not been expected to live, but huge amounts of antibiotics have been given without success. In most instances, fevers range from 103 to 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Within a few minutes after the vitamin was injected, fever started to drop, and temperatures frequently reached normal within a few hours. And again, this was Adele Davis writing in 1954 about the Klenner work. But that's absolutely true. Dr. Klenner's paper, which was presented to the American Medical Association, he gave the paper in person, was that 60 out of 60 were completely cured of polio in that manner.
So right there early on, but yet here comes the vaccines and the petrochemicals, and here we go, and we have this terrible care situation that was created, not to mention millions of people died, and certainly in Japan, because 6,000 people died of polio in just a short period of time in research studies that America did on the vaccine.
Right.
Before they got it right.
That's right. And, polio is a success for the vaccine, but you're absolutely right that it because of the emphasis on the vaccine, this other treatment with vitamin C was put on and completely ignored, and so its success was completely ignored. But there's a terrific book out, I'm sure you're aware of, that tries to bring this old research back into the limelight, and that's Dr. Thomas Levy's book called Vitamin C, Infectious Diseases and Toxins, Curing the Incurable. It was written in 2002. And the problem with the vitamin C and its ability to attack viral infections is not that there is too little information, it's that there's too much information. I know, or I've read, that there are 24,000 studies on vitamin C. There's up to 80,000 articles and reports. It's almost impossible for a human being to read the abstracts for those things, much less read the entire study. But Dr. Levy has done a remarkable job of, as a textbook writer might, assimilating this information. He writes about Klenner that he was able to demonstrate repeatedly that vitamin C appears to be the ideal agent for killing any infecting virus.
Of course, to our listeners, Dr. Levy, many of them will remember, we've had on the show as the fabulous doctor from Peak Performance who's developed the studies to tell you whether or not you react to the materials that are put into your mouth through the Dental Association.
That's right. In fact, that's what got Dr. Levy interested, I think, in vitamin C.
He is a cardiologist turned researcher and dentist.
That's right. Again, since you brought up the polio, I just want to kind of finish up on this. Here we have Dr. Levy's book was published in 2002, much less written before that, so he didn't know anything about this SARS epidemic we're facing. And, of course, we can't know for sure without trying that vitamin C, but it has been effective against every virus up to this point and almost every bacteria. In fact, Dr. Levy's book starts that, amazingly, vitamin C has already been documented in the medical literature to have readily and consistently cured both acute polio and acute hepatitis, two viral diseases still considered by modern medicine to be incurable regardless of the treatment used. And then he goes on, citing 1,200 studies to basically support his notion and challenge anyone to take a look at the studies or bring up their own that shows anything to the contrary. And so the bottom line is vitamin C not only works, it works within minutes bringing fevers down. It should be undeniable. The only way it could be denied is it's ignored, it's not tried.
So instead of being hooked up to our beds in the hospital with sugar water,
Right.
We probably should have an IV going of vitamin C.
That's exactly right. In fact, if anybody here who knows anybody, or if they're going to be facing any of these, whether it be West Nile, whether it be SARS, they would be wise to find one of the 500 physicians quietly, they don't advertise it, who are giving IV vitamin C and curing viral infections routinely.
So this might be a doctor that is known to do chelation.
That's true.
Or a nurse practitioner that is known to give vitamins by way of injection or to IV that would be giving a nutritional supplement through directly into the blood through IV.
Now, what's interesting, of course, is that we take, the problem we have with Hong Kong. 60 million people are terrified right now, and rightly so. The death rate looks to be much higher than they're publicizing. You cannot put 60 million people on vitamin C IV. You can put the people that get the acute illness on it, but you can't. The way that they're going to have to fight this, when they look at this literature, when people make this available, and we can talk about the fact that the government right now is trying to shut this up, the fact that vitamin C does have
I would like
effect.
for you to go into a bit of that, because that's really pretty frightening right there.
It is, and I just have to believe that the people doing it think they are acting in the best interest. They really believe the fact that if there were a cure like what I'm talking about for viral illness, everybody would know about it, so therefore it can't be true. Mm-hmm. And that's why these books by Levy and these research papers are invaluable. So we do have that problem, but people are not going to be able to use IV to prevent it. So that means they're going to have to be taking by mouth vitamin C. And
what's the best source for this? Is it would you say?
Levy recommends sodium ascorbate ascorbic acid. With the amounts we're talking about, it can only be, the regular things that you would buy at a store. I mean, there's not going to be a lot of choice in this. There's probably going to be a shortage when people find out. There's all sorts of aspects to that. I know that Dr. Cathcart, who has been treating 20,000 patients of viral illnesses, basically curing them since at least the 1970s, claims that ascorbic acid is the only form by mouth that has what he calls the ascorbate effect, the effect of destroying these viruses. He thinks it has to do with the molecular structure, that when it's bound with something, it can only accept one free radical. Mm-hmm. When it's ascorbic acid, it can soak up two. And he likens using high amounts of vitamin C like pouring water on a free radical fire. And so that's one of the reasons he thinks that very, very high amounts have the effect that they do on the body. And his claim is that all the damage done during these illnesses is the function of the free radical stream that spurts out once these illnesses start their havoc.
So that means that it's free to morph into whatever it needs to become, or to destroy a cell to steal the electrical potential.
Right. So ascorbic acid, to answer your question, I think it is ascorbic acid. And just again, the fact is that that's one of the things about these technology products that I'm connected with. It's a recognition that people just can't take the number of pills that you would have to take day after day. And so they turn these into drink mixes, sweetened by stevia. You can either, the regular taste is very, very good, but you could add a little bit of pineapple orange or something and vary the taste from day to day. Mm-hmm. But you avoid the dozens and dozens of pills that would otherwise be required on a daily basis to boost the vitamin C to what our livers should be making if we were like the rest of the animals.
Where does ester C fall into this consideration?
There's two sides to that from my knowledge, and from talking to the Linus Pauling Institute, Pauling was a little bit wary of it. It is known that ester C is absorbed faster, does get into cells faster, and less of it is required to cure scurvy in guinea pigs. So on that part, there's no doubt. However, it's not the same vitamin C that the animals in the animal kingdom's liver makes in liver. So in a sense, it's an enhanced form of vitamin C. But I think so I think the jury's a little bit out on long-term use. So I stick with ascorbic acid myself.
Now, what's the difference between, you mentioned sodium ascorbate, and we have calcium ascorbate, and that might just be where it figures into it can not be bound with anything? Or is sodium the best? If you're going to have it bound, sodium is the way.
Well, one of the reasons I respect Dr. Levy because I know the base of literature that he went through, and his recommendation in his book just published is either ascorbic acid or sodium ascorbate, and some of the reasons that they mention sodium ascorbate, I think, is it just makes it a little less acidic, a little easier on the stomach. Remember, we have to take it in by mouth. Most animals produce it in their liver, so whatever they get by mouth is extra. And I think that's sort of the reason for sodium ascorbate, just to help people to
because it's an
tolerate it. He also cautions, though, in the book against calcium ascorbate, and I'll leave that to the readers of his text to read that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I think it's ascorbic acid. It seems to be that's what Pauling recommended. It is. In fact, if there are any physicians who are thinking about IV vitamin C, you cannot give ascorbic acid IV. It has to be sodium ascorbate IV, and either at the Vitamin C Foundation you can find a link to how to prepare high-dose vitamin C for IV application. So
and of course, there's all the doctors out there, right, that are doing chelation with the organizations that, of course, have formulations, too.
Well, there are. It's fairly easy to make, and the instructions again, are on the website. And these are Dr. Cathcart, who is, again, the world leader in how to do this. And there's also a video that physicians can buy. But I think, again, as the word starts to spread, that vitamin C, and not vitamin C in low doses, they're absolutely right. They have absolutely proved that if you take vitamin C in a low dose, it is not antiviral. Okay, it only becomes antiviral at what Levy calls optidoses, which are larger than megadoses. I mean, we're talking maybe 50 to 100 grams, 50,000 to 100,000 intravenously, depending on the disease. And so for something like SARS, my guess is we're probably talking more.
Wow. All right. We're going to be right back, so stay tuned with us. We have more to come. Hey, welcome to the second portion of the Technology Hour. I'm Ren, your host, and we're visiting today with Owen Fonarow, Director of Vitamin C Foundation, and Linus Pauling's work on vitamin C, and Dr. Rath as well. And perhaps this would be a good time to give out your address and your website.
Well, yeah, I'd appreciate that. We have, as you mentioned last week, I have about 4 fairly large sites aimed at different aspects of medicine and alternative medicine. So the most visited site these days is the vitamincfoundation.org. It's all one word, vitamincfoundation.org, and that's where we try to post the latest news and studies on vitamin C and help, we like to look at these stories that come out that say that vitamin C is harmful. We make it our job to investigate and see if there's any basis. And so far to date, there has not been any basis in any story that claims that vitamin C in high doses is harmful to the vast majority of the public.
Now, is that written out, is that written out all the way in Vitamin C Foundation?
Yes.
Okay.
Vitamin C Foundation, it's all one word, .org. We also, the first site that we ever started was after we found the video on heart disease where Linus Pauling is saying that high doses of vitamin C and lysine can control, even cure cardiovascular disease, is paulingtherapy.com, and Linus Pauling's last name is Pauling, and then therapy.com. And again, we wanted to post the site because the way that medicine has worked in the past is the people that made these discoveries were forgotten, and then when it becomes so obvious that they can't ignore it anymore, somebody else steps up as having invented the therapy, and we want to make it very clear that this was Linus Pauling's last contribution to humankind, and so we try to honor him with the fact that of his invention and trying to make it a little easier than reading maybe the technical papers on what exactly the theory is, and then we have a lot of testimonials that we've collected over the last 5 or 6 years, and we've tried to put people's names and phone numbers to some. It's always dangerous, but you can talk to the people who have experienced basically reversals in heart disease.
Mm-hmm.
And then we maintain another website called Bolin Report, B as in boy, O-L-E-N, report.com. This is a daily newspaper of health news, but we look at it for the stories that the regular news would ignore, and that is all the studies that come out every day on vitamin C and antioxidants and that type of thing.
Excellent. And this is what we call in the medical field orthomolecular or ultramolecular medicine.
That's correct.
Which has brought us to the point where even before we had the gene coding, we had orthomolecular medicine because we had understandings of the interrelationship of and pathways on electrical cellular basis. So cellular nutrition is been with us for 20 years anyway.
At least. You know what's interesting is since we've been talking about vitamin C and proline, I don't know if you've got a chance to interview Dr. Matthias Rath or anybody who is promoting his current program, but they have made another exciting discovery about the very same ingredients with respect to cancer. I'm not sure if you want to go into that right now or not, but it's
why not? I mean,
sure. Basically, and I may have the numbers wrong, and I think they're slightly proprietary, but something around 14 grams of vitamin C, 12 grams of lysine, 2 grams of proline, and green tree extract is what Dr. Rath is now saying halts or stops cancer in its tracks. And he has a very sophisticated program. And I must assume that what's happened is through these years of treating people with these substances for heart disease, they started to notice that cancer was stopping at the same time.
Sure.
And so exactly what you said, they call it cellular medicine, and it seems to be a cure-all, and I'm sorry about that, but it's one of these things where there's no question that many of the ills of mankind have to do with us not making vitamin C in our livers like animals do.
That's the whole thing, and so of course when petrochemical societies certainly can figure that out, and then have a handle on, of course, this is how they have to make and bind drugs so that they mimic natural elements that we would normally get from plants, so that they can be owned and patented. I mean, it has helped in the pharmaceutical industry,
yes.
But these ways are known.
Well, what's interesting, too, is, and one thing I've noticed, and you probably, the classically trained physician knows that the substances, the prescription drugs that he is prescribing have an effect, but they also have a toxicity. And so he normally will try the smallest amounts that can provide the desired effect. So they kind of go upward until they get, knowing that they're increasing the danger to the patient.
And to jumpstart and to save lives. To get maybe somebody that is in a desperate need where finally they end up at the doctor's office and hear, whoa, it's life-saving.
Right.
They need the drugs.
Right. And so what I was going to point out, though, is that while they start very low because they're toxic, the orthomolecular paradigm that I think the orthomolecular doctors are beginning to discover is it's a completely opposite. These substances like vitamin C and lysine have no known toxic effects, so you start up at the top at a very high level, and then you back off because of to avoid the nuisance effects. So
and die off.
Pardon me?
And actually the effect of going slow to the point where the person or the organism can get rid of the die-off.
Right. That's right.
Without damaging organs or anything.
And that's a whole other problem with anything that would destroy cancer and leave the remnants, or anything that would destroy, anything in your body. You're absolutely right, the toxicity aspect of that. But I was just pointing out that the orthomolecular approach is something that a regular doctor would not be comfortable with because they're so used to the substances. Vitamins to them don't seem that much different than drugs because they have a very small amounts usually have strong physiological effects. So they look at it in the same family as drugs, and I think that's one of the things that happened with vitamin C. Irwin Stone thought it was misnamed. It has vitamin-like properties, but unlike the other vitamins, which are generally required in small amounts, vitamin C is like a missing metabolite. It's used by so many processes. It's produced in such large amounts by the animals. Missing stress hormone is another name because of its, being in the adrenal cortex. It's one of the most the places in the body where the concentrations are the highest.
Well, yeah, and if we said if it's stored, it's the adrenals.
That's right.
Because it's needed consistently, and that it's been said that vitamin C is considered the oil for the body, like an oil is to the engine of a car.
Right. I think that's a good analogy, and so that's really where we've been focusing. I think it's kind of interesting, and as you know, that there have been a couple of reports lately that have made the news and they mix some things that are known. I don't know if readers or the listeners know that minerals are different than vitamins. Generally, minerals can be toxic if you gave high sustained amounts, where vitamins can rarely become toxic. And so there's been reports lately that take some known toxicity of minerals and mixing that in with vitamins, and again, apparently trying to scare people away from things like vitamin C, which, knowing its huge beneficial health, how beneficial it is to health, I just don't understand how anybody could not check their facts, check their public, and make sure of what they're printing is true before they go out and attack some of these substances like vitamin C.
And I find that a lot of folks take 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C, and obviously we can see that is not near enough.
Right.
Well, we're going to have a break, so stay tuned with us. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back with the Technology Hour, and we're talking today with Owen Fonarow, our Director of Vitamin C Foundation. And we've been talking about the different effects of high-dose vitamin C and lysine and proline. And I'd like for you to give out your website and information, phone number, so that our listeners could take a look at some of this data that you've got. And this is the work of Linus Pauling.
Well, we're definitely involved with that, with heart disease, and we're following him and his lead. And thankfully, there was a man of his competence who could look at these 80,000 papers and make sense of it. It's something that I couldn't do. I couldn't spend my lifetime doing. So thanks to Pauling, we know what we know. The number, you can reach me personally at 1-800-894-9025. I do have a teaching schedule, but the message will tell you when I'm available. And then vitamincfoundation.org or paulingtherapy.com. And then, of course, we'd love to have people visit daily thebowenreport.com, and where we try to keep people up to speed on what's happening on a daily basis in the world of alternative medicine.
I wanted to bring out that for the folks that do go to the Internet site, just to bring so that they have an understanding of what you have. A couple of formulas. One is the heart technology one, and then there is an additional one for like aortic stenosis, where there's actually calcium hardening of the valves of the heart, which you might have to have a cow valve or a heart valve plate replaced.
Right. Well, I could talk about both of those formulas. And again, the idea behind the heart technology, and the other one is we call it a Scorzine 9, and a Scorzine for the combination of the ascorbic acid and lysine. That one has vitamin K added. Not everybody can immediately go on vitamin K, because one of the routine treatments of modern cardiology is to put patients on blood thinner anticoagulants such as Coumadin or warfarin. And the problem with that, as we discussed last week, is that will block vitamin K uptake, and it has a very effective drug for preventing clotting or pseudohemophilia. But one of the side effects of that is it causes, or at least in animals for certain, and very probably in human beings, the buildup of calcium in soft tissue, particularly your arteries and your heart valves.
So if you're thinning the blood with pharmaceuticals, there's a good chance that you will have calcium buildup.
That's right.
It throws it out of solution and creates hardening. And
I do believe that once the cardiologist is confronted with these reports, and you can find many of these reports off the second page of the Bowen report, right in the Medline, links right in the Medline, I think they would have second thoughts and be looking for other ways. And if I could take a moment before I go into the technology or the heart technology, well, everybody could probably figure out that I am not too enamored with the treatments of modern cardiology. And I would like to take the time, well, I've got some time here, to talk about one treatment that has recently come up. And they're basically putting radiation pellets in the arteries of heart patients, and they're doing it because of something called restenosis. Restenosis is where the plaque regrows. They, in my opinion, not understanding or being exposed to the Pauling theory that all plaque really is healing. It's like a scab growing in the arteries, and therefore if you do an angioplasty or a cardio bypass graft, you would expect that the body healing itself, that this restenosis would happen, although it may overshoot. So not understanding it's a healing process, they have been looking for ways to stop it, and they found one way, and that is to basically use radiation to kill or deaden the inside of the artery. And the reason I'm so against that, and I hope people would really check the internet and before they allow that to happen, is that once you kill the inside of the artery, then it can no longer heal at all. And so the vitamin C cure that we're talking about, this heart technology or Scorzine, would not be expected to work. So that's sort of my warning to people to be very, very wary. It's FDA approved, and I consider it to be a highly dangerous procedure of little
this could
and
be
limited
considered
benefit.
like chemotherapy, right?
Pardon me?
Like chemotherapy pellets, kind of like that, when they put a stent in?
Yeah, they have the similar thing with these so-called medical stents, which may be putting a Tamofax. They're just trying to kill the artery. I mean, it's as if they don't understand what's going on, that it's just trying to heal itself. And the problem with killing it is that all of a sudden, the patients that have that done, there's probably no way that taking vitamin C is going to cause that thing to become alive again. So you're not necessarily, you've probably killed any chance to heal. And at some point, when it completely wears out, what are they going? What are you going to do? So I would just be very wary of that, especially since we've had such success with the products like Heart Technology and Scorzine, basically vitamin C, lysine, and proline. They also include vitamin A, vitamin E, CQ10, and carnitine. Now, what you're talking about with the Scorzine 9, they've added taurine and magnesium, and then vitamin K. And as we were talking, vitamin K is approved in Japan in very large amounts as a treatment for osteoporosis because it acts like a hormone and helps to regulate calcium out of soft tissues into the bone. And so that's really where you kind of led me for a while ago, why we're very high on the probability that we're going to be able to show reversal in calcium as well as a reversal, which we've been showing in the plaques, the more or less the inside plaques. I think what we're finding is that the calcium tends to be deposited more on the outside of the arteries.
And we find that when we do take drugs, there are metal salts that help actually bind these synthesized properties to make them work from petrochemical. Much of the pharmaceutical industry is, of course, this is what it is. And we have these metal salts, and it blocks the magnesium. It blocks magnesium uptake. So we can say, gee, we take a lot of magnesium.
Right.
But here, if we're doing any pharmaceutical drugs at all, we're going to need either another source. Maybe that's to be considered. So certainly there are many sources of magnesium.
Right.